Virginia Transportation Authority. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would ask Ms. Firestone to do a roll call and certify quorum.
Sure. Town of Ashland, Mr. Hodges.
Here.
Dr. McGraw. Charles City County, Mr. Atkins.
Bill Code is sitting in.
Thank you. Chesterfield County, Chair Carroll.
Here.
Mr. Winslow. Richland County, Mr. Spoonhour.
Here.
Ms. Lascolette. Hanover County, Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Mr. Davis. Henrico County, Mr. Thornton.
Here.
Ms. O'Bannon. New Kent County, Ms. Page. Mr. Lockwood. Powhatan County, Mr. Byerly. Mr. McClung. City of Richmond, Mayor Stoney.
Here.
Mr. Jones. Virginia House of Delegates, Delegate Robinson. Here. Commonwealth Transportation Board, Mr. Brown. Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Miller.
Present.
GRTC, Ms. Adams. Here. Ms. Torres. RMTA, Ms. Dean. Here. PRPT, Ms. Dubinsky. Mr. Brule. Mr. Crockett. PDOT, Mr. Bridge. Mr. Totten. Mr. Riblet. DRPT, Ms. Dubinsky.
Here, even though I don't have a name tag.
The Port Authority, Mr. Edwards. Ms. Vick. And Ms. Nelson. That concludes the roll call for attendance, and we do have a quorum.
Thank you. Appreciate it. As everyone probably knows, we do actually have a policy in place dealing with remote participation. And normally if someone wanted to participate remotely, they would contact the chair. And my understanding is we've had no one who has contacted to participate remotely. So we don't need to deal with that. Everybody had an opportunity to review the agenda? Does anybody have anything that they would like to add to the agenda or change in reference to the agenda? Seeing or hearing anybody, well, then we'll say that the agenda is approved. Do I have anybody, has everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes from the February 23rd CVTA meeting that were sent out? Does anyone have any questions on any of the minutes that were sent out? I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes. We have a motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any discussion on the motion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Public comment period. Chip?
We have had no requests for public comment. There may be somebody here. Doesn't look like.
All right. Not seeing anybody coming forward for public comment, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the CVTA Chairman's report. My report is going to be very brief. We have met with the Finance Committee, and I think the Finance Chair will actually have some comments on that. We are in the process of working with the vendor on hiring a executive director. I will be having a conversation with the vendor after this meeting. Part of what we need to do is put together a committee to interview candidates as they develop a candidate list. So I'll be talking with some of you after the meeting to determine if you're interested in being part of the committee. And will seek some input, because I think one of the things that we didn't do last time that I think is perhaps important is we may want to look at having some of our county administrators and city administrators possibly as part of that committee. And so I'll be seeking input on that. And then myself and Mr. Hodges have a presentation to talk with later on today in reference to a draft that was put together for a potential rotation of leadership, similar to what we have in both Plan RBA and the Richmond PPO. As we know that the leadership role has been done in a different capacity for the CVTA since it was created. And part of what I spoke to you about when I asked all of you for your support to be chair is that I would bring a measure forward for us all to consider as to how we could move forward with a leadership rotation in the future as opposed to the way we do it now. And so that'll be up for discussion later. And I think that's it. Move forward to the next, which would be the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance Committee met on March the 8th. I was not able to be here, but Tricia Page did an admirable job of chairing that committee meeting. And basically, there's very little on that meeting other than celebrating the fact that our financials were in good shape and that our income from our investments was much higher than it had in the past. So we were doing very well there. But the biggest thing on that that we had during that meeting is coming up in a little bit with the SPA, which Mr. Fragery will be speaking to in a few moments. And he did a very efficient meeting. She adjourned by 9:20, and I was on the phone, and I laughed, but she couldn't hear it. But, did a great job, and she was here. I was hoping she'd be here today so she could be giving this report, but that I'm going to turn the next part of this report over, which is our financials, to Chet Parsons.
Thanks, Mr. Peterson. One other note from the meeting, we are staff is working with PFM to come back, I believe, at the next Finance Committee meeting to give an update and presentation on next steps. I bring your attention to page 7 in the packet for the tax collections and allocation summary table, the green table. And just to highlight a couple of things, year to date right now, the regional fund has seen a collection of just over $37 million. GRTC has received almost $16 million. And then the total local distributions a little farther down that year to date column, 53.1 million is that 50% distribution back to the member jurisdictions. So lifetime to date, total local distributions of $224 million. And then similar proportions to the regional fund and GRTC. One thing to note, and
Excuse me, Mr. Parsons.
Yes, sir.
Don't we have the ability to put this on for those that are watching virtually?
Yes, well,
Yes, I'll have to,
I'm not
I'll
joined
have
right
to
now.
bring it up, so it may take me just a minute.
Think we best make sure everybody has a chance to see
Yes,
what
sir.
your
thank
Yeah,
you.
someone may watch it later. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Although this also would be part of the agenda report that's in the packet. So anybody who actually would watch this later could also download all of this information in the agenda packet and be able to view it that way as well.
Yeah, but we can't put it up there without it.
Okay. That comes now. The other thing I wanted to note, if you look at the November tax activity, which is the last month's reported here, you can see the significant increase in the sales and use tax revenues. That could be holiday spending. I'd like to go back to the last year and see if it was a similar jump. And then we'll also see when we get the December report, if that's kind of on trend there. So that's great news. The local fuels tax has been steady, fluctuating just a bit month to month, but we're seeing the most impact from the sales tax in terms of receiving taxes. On page 8 is the January monthly investment report, and got to give it up once again for Ms. Longacre and the Chesterfield County Treasurer's Office in making sure that we are reinvesting funds when we're able to. You can see at the bottom just over 1.3 million in FY23 in interest earnings based on the investment portfolio that's shown in the pie chart. And we continue to work closely, staff does, with the Treasurer's Office to to make sure that we are aware of upcoming project needs, so that funds are not tied up when they need to be liquid. But at the same time, reinvesting when able, so that we can continue to see those interest earnings.
I think page 10 is better.
Okay, page 10 is the February report. Yes, sir. So that you see another 300,000 added to the interest earnings from January to February. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Peterson, I think that's the financial report update.
Thank
Take any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Parsons. Any questions, Mr. Parsons? Any on that? Being none, the next item we have as part of the finance committee is the SPA, and I'll turn this over to Eric Gregory.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Peterson, Mr. Chairman, members of the body, before you for final adoption and approval and adoption of the standard project administration agreement, which will be utilized to govern regional projects or projects funded by the regional funds that you have in your account. These have been already, many of these projects are in the pipeline and ready to be approved once the SPAs come back to you, filled in with all the specific project information. This is the version 6/final version. This has been through at least 6 iterations via distribution among all the locality TAC members and local legal counsel. So everybody's had a number of opportunities to review it, as have you. And I ask and recommend final approval today so that we can move forward. We expect the localities to come back to fill all these in, and then they'll be back on your agenda, hopefully with it next month, if not the month thereafter. Or you'll see a series of these coming forward over the next couple of months, probably from the localities, seeking approval of the final agreements with all the specific project information filled in. So this is what we'll utilize going forward. As we go forward, you may see minor adjustments to say, for instance, the appendices to add additional information to those fields. But nothing substantive will change. If it does, we'll come back to you and ask for approval. But this is just to approve the template, not a specific project. But this will be utilized going forward. So. Any questions?
Gregory, this was recommended for approval by the finance committee to the full board. Are there any questions, Gregory, on any of the details of the SPA before we move forward? Comes from finance committee. I don't think the second required, Mr. Chairman.
Second is not required. It's actually considered to be formatted request for approval. Ask for if there's any further discussion on that. Not seeing we'll do roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hodges.
Aye.
Mr. Coda.
Aye.
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Spoonhour.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Aye.
Mr. Thornton.
Aye.
Mayor Stoney.
Aye.
Delegate Robinson.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, that concludes the finance committee report.
Thank you, sir. And I do have to concur. I thought that Ms. Page did an excellent job in running the meeting that day. Excellent job indeed. Next on the agenda is our TAC report. It's all ready to roll.
Mr. Chair, members of the board. This morning, I will be giving the update on items discussed at the last CVTA TAC meeting, which was held on March 13th, 2023. For the fall line, we have received proposals for the wayfinding contract that will help with safety, seamless and consistent amenities for implementation along the corridor. TAC hopes to have the selected proposal by the April Fall Line Working Group meeting. Also, the agreement approved earlier. Thank you. This is necessary for localities in the region to ultimately spend regional CVTA funds, not only on Fall Line Trail, but the other regional projects. Finally, TAC is in its final steps to provide this body with its recommendations for changes to the regional project selection and allocation framework. This is set as an action item at our April 10th CVTA TAC meeting. A few highlights set for TAC approval include CVTA funding cycles will be on alternate years opposite of Smart Scale. Project estimates will be submitted using the VDOT cost estimate workbook as a guide. Added priority project as an eligible highway category. Removes that at least one project should be selected from each of the 7 project categories. Removes that at least one project should be geographically located in each of the 9 member jurisdictions. Adds language that PE only and leveraging requests should be funded independent of each other. Added 3 additional sections on request for leveraging CVTA funds for outside funding. Key highlight from this enhanced section reaffirms that localities are allowed 2 Smart Scale cycles to hold the committed leveraging funds, but also adds that a locality can request in writing to use a portion of leveraging funds for up to 30% preliminary engineering. TAC believes this may improve the likelihood of successful funding from outside funding agency programs like Smart Scale and IIJA. I will entertain any questions if there are any.
Mr. Hodges.
I understand, Ms. Clerk, this will be on our agenda next month to consider the details.
Yes.
You're just giving us a heads up.
Yeah. Throwing out some fillers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we make sure that well in advance of the meeting, people are sent what the proposed changes are. So that way they can have an opportunity to review them prior to coming. And that way, if there's any questions, they can get with their TAC member or even email back to say, hey, what about this? What about that? And I think it'll make for a smoother discussion if we have an opportunity to have a lot of that back and forth prior to coming to the meeting.
So we do have the document with the track changes, but you would also like a list, kind of like I read, of some of the
Yep.
standouts.
Yeah, I think it's important. And I think it's good points that you bring that the TAC brought forward.
Thank you.
Ms. Clark, is that, I assume all the other TAC members have that same list you just read to us? I
Yeah.
couldn't write fast.
Oh, yes. And I can provide my update to the secretary for posting if need be.
It'd be good if you do that, then they could maybe even we could print copies for everybody, see if they want to take them for the read.
Sure.
Make it even easier. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just for clarification, so TAC meets on the 10th,
Mhm.
CVTA meets on the 28th, so we expect there'll be at least a 2-week window following any TAC action to get something turned around for authority.
Good. I just want to make sure people have an opportunity, have plenty of time to digest what the proposed changes are. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Unless anybody else has any other questions. Next up would be the CVTA leadership rotation. Mr. Hodges would like to take that.
Sure. Last year, the nominating committee of which I was part with Dr. Newbill and
I'm
Mr.
going to pass the
Barlow.
information out while you speak. And here she is.
Good morning. Good morning.
Singing your praises earlier.
Okay.
We're in the finance committee meeting.
Oh, thank you. I'm ready for my report. To hear this.
I was hoping you'd be here earlier so that you can give it instead of me, but I just paid you instead.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sorry.
You ready for me to give it?
What we're on one discussion right now. We'll come back to that after this discussion's over. We'll come back now that you're here to give you any opportunity to give an amended report to the finance committee.
Last year, the nominating committee, which included Dr. Newbill, recommended that the region consider a rotation of all jurisdictions into the leadership positions. And also they're permanent members of the finance committee. But the smaller localities, they're rather than an annual decision as to who donned the two positions for localities other than Henrico City and Chesterfield, so that there'd be a regular rotation for that. The CVTA accepted the nomination. Chair and I met and discussed a rotation, and I believe they're passing out that draft. It, I think, reflects the rotation that we have now with the chair or the vice chair moving into the chair position, and then starting with the alphabetically after, after Chesterfield, going to Goochland and then the counties following for the leadership. So it's a draft proposal. One way of looking at doing it. We're presenting it for your consideration, and I think Mr. Gregory has drafted some language that he may wish to speak to. Mr. Gregory?
1 second. So this is not necessarily, it's not necessarily an item we need to vote on today. We wanted to bring it forward for consideration by the committee, give you time to take a look at it and have input. The way that the Plan RBA and TPO actually administer their rotations is through an administrative policy, and that's what Mr. Gregory is going to speak to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the body, at the chairman's direction, I drafted a non-binding governance document. So it's a guidance document number 1 provided about the leadership rotation, and it's just a draft before you today. And this would allow you to put into place, if the body so chooses, the rotation suggested by Mr. Hodges. And you can read it yourselves, but it just says to facilitate a regular and orderly rotation of leadership of the Central Virginia Transportation Authority and its Finance Committee among the voting members, as identified in Articles 2 and 3 of the bylaws. The CVTA chairmanship, vice chairmanship, and representation on the Finance Committee may be rotated among the voting members in the order presented in the attached table 1. Upon the completion of the cycle and the final year designated, the cycle may repeat itself. So this is a non-binding governance document. It would provide a template for moving forward, but of course it would be subject to amendment and you would not be bound by it. The TPO and Plan RBA have chosen to operate this way and under a similar guidance document. And that was the template that we used to prepare this one. So it just provides sort of a guidance, but not it doesn't rise to the level of being a bylaw or anything like that. It's just a guidance.
Members, what this does actually, it still maintains the flexibility that if sometime in the future, if different members are on serving in this capacity and they choose that they would like to go back to a different system, they could. But I think it sets a standard forward that we could, that is similar to what we all utilize in these other 2 committees that would allow for unity for all jurisdictions to have a leadership role moving forward in the CVTA.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
I have one other comment.
absolutely.
Looking at the rotation, received who the chairmans were, information on the Plan RBA and RRTPO, and tried not to have the leadership be duplicated in those other regional bodies. There was one year, if you follow the normal rotation, FICO in 2027 would have been on the chair of the CVTA and RRTPO. So pushed up NewCat and dropped back Henrico. All my responsibility. Nothing personal, but anyway, did make that adjustment. So the concept is that it follows alphabetically after the city is chair next year. And then the rotation follows alphabetically with that one exception for Henrico.
The other reason to do a policy also gives the CVTA the opportunity to retain the flexibility that we all know that positions can change throughout with elections. And you could have someone who gets elected to a governing body. And as we know that the governing body itself would be designated either chair or in the mayor's case, the mayor. But you could have someone come in that could be put in a position that is a new chair and they may not, or an entirely new board, and they may not want to actually serve as chair or vice chair the first time out. And so it allows for, again, for the authority to retain flexibility that if a rotation can be followed, it can. But if somebody, and I give you an example, when I got elected, they said, all right, you're going to be the chair of the Tri-Cities TPO. And I'm like, no. All right. Never served on the TPO, my first meeting. And so they actually have the flexibility to change the rotation to allow for someone else to do that. And I think it's important for us to maintain that flexibility as well. And now I'll open the floor for any discussion, or if everyone would like to wait. And then when we have it up for a vote, have discussion, a more robust discussion next time, I'll leave it up to the body.
Mr. Chair, we've done that same thing here with this TPO. Before had to make adjustments, those things. I think that's fine. When I looked at this, I do have one, maybe not be a valid concern, but the finance committee. We're rotating 2 at a time on the smaller jurisdictions. I'm wondering about continuity on those. It would be better to have New Kent in with Powhatan next time, to have some continuity amongst the smaller jurisdictions on the finance committee.
You bring up a good point.
Question.
And the other point too is that, you know, if you talk about rotation on the chairmanship, again, outside on the finance committee, outside of Enrico, Richmond, or Chesterfield, you know, we do want to make sure that whoever's serving from the other localities has an opportunity to have some experience on the finance committee before perhaps being put in the role of chair. So that may be something we need to take a look at that rotation as well.
That might be a little more complicated, which means, Mr. Page, you still got some more work to do.
Yes, sir.
I had a point of inquiry for Mr. Hodges, representing the committee. Did the committee state that there were problems with the current peer selection format that we currently utilize for leadership?
The concern was that the current form didn't contemplate a rotation system. It was more assuring localities that they would be able to look at a chart like this and see that they would have an opportunity rather than every year basically reinventing the wheel. And to be clear, Dr. Newbill and Mr. Byerly didn't participate in the creation of this chart. The chairman and I worked on it. But I think that's the basic concern, that be a way for localities to be assured that in the next year, 9 years, that they have at least one opportunity, in some cases more, to serve on the finance committee, and at least one opportunity to serve as vice chair and chair. And this, so that's the concept. And I think Mr. Peterson's point is excellent. It can be, the chart can be improved, but the idea of a rotation they thought would make it more predictable and more assurance to the localities, that particularly the smaller localities, that they were going to be involved in the leadership. And it's not a perfect system, but it's an effort to try to at least provide that assurance.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would say neither system is perfect. There are always imperfections when human beings are involved. And then I will say, you know, Richmond's current position is that we support the selection process of nominating leaders rather than a rotation at the moment. I've not seen anything broken with the current system that we currently utilize. And so if it's not broke, don't fix it sort of person.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anybody else? All right, not seeing any other discussion, this will be back before the committee in the future. I appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate Mr. Hodges' time that he put forward in coming up with this. I do think that it's is a worthy discussion. Next up is a Commonwealth Transportation Board updates. As we know, Mr. Brown, I think will rotate off of the Commonwealth Transportation Board. I think end of July, end of June, I think. It'd be July 1st, it'd be someone else that the governor will appoint. And it's unfortunate that Mr. Brown is not on with us today or here today, because I do think that his participation in the CVTA since its inception has been both worthy, excellent, and vital in what he actually brought to the table to the organization. And I do believe that the CTB position is vitally important to the CVTA. And it's going to be more vitally important as to who we may actually, the governor may select and appoint to be in that position after Mr. Brown. And so I will tell you that I did want to share with the group that, you know, there's a person that many who serve on some of the other committees that we've talked today know, and his name is Tim Davey. And Tim Davey is someone that I feel would be a worthy candidate to be considered by the governor's office for consideration to the CTB. And if I would ask all the jurisdictions, if you have someone else that you're considering, then obviously we know that this is the point in time where you would probably want to talk with that person. But I would also ask that if you have not had anybody else you've considered, then I would ask you to reach out and speak with Mr. Davey and talk with him and ask him about his desire to serve in his capacity. I think that with his regional experience in both the transportation and is pretty vast, that he could be a very good fit for the CTB in the future, and certainly with his experience with the Richmond region, having served in other capacities. So anyway, if you don't have information, we'll make sure that we send it out to everyone. I just wanted to bring this forward to your attention. That because we do know that Mr. Brown is going to rotate off and that the governor's office will be considering something. And I'm sure that most of you already thought about this already, but I felt it was important to share with you that we did find out that he has submitted his name and a resume to the governor's office for consideration. So,
Chairman,
yes.
Being human, memory sometimes is limited, and sometimes it's such that we lose track of it. So when people do well, I think we should make sure that we give them the flowers where they can appreciate it. And people are in positions that they don't really accomplish the things that are needed, all groups included. And I'm saying that as a prelude to say that Mr. Brown did a very good job for us. And I think that it would be a benevolent act on our part to at least have something of appreciation or statement of something acknowledging how during the actually at the beginning, the inception of a brand new tool for District 15, that one of the members, kind of looked at things in a kind of futuristic way in the planning there. And for colleagues like that, we don't want them to be forgotten. So I just want to mention that so that we will do something to acknowledge our appreciation.
Well, Mr. Thornton, I think that's a splendid idea. I had thought about that myself. I know that quite frankly, that we have, a tradition that we do when the chairs change. But we do have people that will rotate out from this committee. Eventually, all of us will rotate out from this committee. And I think it is important for us to have some type of way to recognize that service. It could be in the form of a resolution from this body. There's many different ways to do that. And I'm open to any suggestion that anybody may have in regards to that. Since we have that as a suggestion. So if you have any thoughts, if you want to share that later with the chair and vice chair, give us an opportunity to bring something back to the next meeting for consideration. Not just to recognize Mr. Brown, but perhaps put something in place that would recognize all members' service as they rotate out. But again, as Mr. Thornton has said, Mr. Brown has been part of this from the very first 5.5-hour meeting we held in organizing the CVTA at the convention center. So thank you for that, Mr. Thornton.
And Mr. Chairman, I will add that actually before
that,
the 5-hour meeting at the convention center, he was involved in the writing of the legislation and the ideas and the concepts that we utilize today for CVTA. I think he saw, and I think a lot of us agree, that Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads had a vehicle, no pun intended, to invest in transportation infrastructure. And I'm appreciative of Mr. Brown being able to navigate at the time, the legislative wins and been able to bring this to fruition alongside some of our legislative partners. And so I certainly support a resolution or a gift, whatever it may be, to recognize his contributions to not just the CVTA, but Central Virginia at large.
I'd be happy to second that, the mayor's motion on that for the resolution, but I would also suggest to also take it a little bit further than we may be down the road, because he was definitely a charter member of this organization.
Well, I will say that we did send letters of thank you to both Congresswoman Jennifer McClellan for her service, and also Delegate Dolores McQuinn for her service on the CVTA, and certainly at a minimum that was appropriate at that time. But if we come up with something else, then whatever we draft, we may go back and issue the similar statements to them as well, because they also were part of the CVTA and its creation. So did you make that as a form of a motion?
Sure.
To do
It was a good idea, yes. It was actually Mr. Thor's idea, so I don't want to steal anyone's thunder.
Lauren, are you making a resolution motion? Do you want to have more discussion with the opportunities for more input?
Mr. Chair, before you make the motion.
Yes.
I don't know if this body has the ability to award a scholarship to a student, but perhaps naming a scholarship after him might be an opportunity to commemorate his work.
See, that's why we have these discussions. That's something, well, I think from a line item perspective, that would require something to go through the finance committee to determine, how that would work. Not that we can't have a discussion on that in the future and put that on the finance committee's agenda to discuss.
We can, but I think, Mr. Chairman, but I think we have to let Mr. Gregory see whether we can do it under the terms of
I
the
agree.
legislation.
I agree.
Whether we
100%.
can have that kind of an expense.
Yep.
Legislation.
Happy with that. Yep. You got a little homework assignment there. Why don't we hold off on the motion on this, because I think that was another great discussion. We'll have some information that'll go through the finance committee, and we'll come back at the next meeting with a recommendation of, and certainly any other board member that has any other recommendations, please forward them to myself and Mr. Parsons, so that we can share them out with everybody else. So everybody will have the same information, and then we can have make a decision at our next meeting. But I do think that we do need to do something that would be most appropriate. So thank you. I do want to circle back to Ms. Page, who is may have an addition to the finance committee report that we didn't get.
Thank you. Yeah. In our last finance meeting, we gave recognition to the International Women's Month. We had a CVTA TAC update that was given to us, and also our finances. We went into a sort of lengthy discussion about the non-binding governance document, and decided upon that to send it back out to give more time for suggestions. And Attorney Gregory worked on that and did indeed send them out to the localities. And we did it, and our fearless leader wasn't with us in person, but on Zoom. And so that concludes our very short report on our finance committee.
Thank you, Ms. Page.
I did forget the International Women's Day, so I'm certainly glad you came and brought that back up.
And it was absolutely appropriate that we had a fine lady actually leading discussion on that day.
That's correct.
Mhm. Thank you. We appreciate the update. CVTA calendar. Mr. Parsons, you want to talk to that?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. On page 21 of your packet is the proposed calendar for the authority itself, as well as the finance committee, the technical advisory committee, the fall line working group. Ms. Firestone put this together, and I think it's a great snapshot of what we expect to see over the next year in terms of meeting schedules for all of our standing committees that are currently operating. A couple things to highlight. The May meeting would normally be, I believe, May 26th, which is leading into the Memorial Day weekend. And we do have the joint annual meeting, the second annual joint annual meeting scheduled for Thursday, June 1st. So the proposal is to cancel the May meeting and hold the June 1st joint meeting as the CVTA meeting then. On June 1st, we can certainly, if needed, set aside some time that day for any business items that are necessary, but at this point, staff doesn't foresee any need to do that. That's really as you recall from last year, that's a time to celebrate the accomplishments of the authority, as well as the TPO and Plan RVA over the last year. We don't expect to have an August meeting or a November meeting. November because of the holiday. But because of that, we'll move up the December meeting to the December 1st in a similar fashion as we did this year. And then similar rotation as we get into next Memorial Day and the joint annual meeting in June. The Finance Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee are following a similar format to what we've put in place, so it shouldn't alter calendar items for the membership. And the following working group, we expect a need to dig deep with that working group over the next year as segments start to be activated and construction and bids are let out, so that the following working group stays on top of all of that activity. The SBAs that we're going to have coming in, we expect that to be a major work item, not just for the following working group, but Finance Committee, as well as the full authority. So it'll be a great year, lots of work to do, and hopefully this meeting schedule will kind of whet everybody's appetite for the expectations that are going to be coming.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on the proposed calendar? I do have.
Mr. Chair, I do.
Yes, sir.
Basically, I noticed we've moved all the times and everything. Maybe we may want to discuss whether we want to continue at 8:30 or go to 9 o'clock like all the rest. That's all the thing.
Well, that's a good point. And since we have, I think, the Finance Committee here, at least as part of this meeting, does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I'm happy either way.
9 okay?
Likewise.
9?
I'm fine.
Okay. 9 okay? Mr. Chair, you can make that change.
We can make that change right now today. We'll have to worry about next.
Okay. Perfect. Ms. Thornton.
Chairman, I just want to notify the chair that I think according to this schedule, our last meeting will be December 1st.
Your last meeting.
That's what I mean. I use the floor for my heart with the CVTA.
So we're gonna have a party before that.
Well, don't have to have a party. I just want to know that that'll be my last meeting officially with it, so that's good.
That'll be a sad day. That'll be a sad day.
Mr. Chairman, we can bring him back unofficially, okay?
We'll find a job for him if he wants it, but I don't know. I don't know if he'll want one or not. I do want to, any other questions on the calendar? The other thing I would ask, Mr. Gregory, if I'm correct, that the July 14th meeting will also be an organizational meeting at the beginning. For both the regular body and the finance committee. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Because we do normally do that in the first meeting in July.
Correct. And that one, or by organizational meeting, it'll be elected.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, we don't have this as an action item, but it might be a good idea to approve the schedule as presented.
No problem with that. Do I have a motion to approve the schedule as presented? So moved. Motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion to approve the schedule as presented? Yes.
Just a question for Mr. Gregory. I know in some of our committees, and I apologize, I don't know for this one, but there's a requirement that we meet a certain amount of times per year, or and the chair can cancel. I just want to make sure that with us, it looks like a quarter of our meetings of the months, so we're missing, we're not scheduled for 3. If something were to come up like a snowstorm or something that would that put us in jeopardy of not meeting that requirement if there is one? I mean,
There's always that possibility, but you can always call a special meeting if necessary.
okay, great, thank you.
Well, I think the question is, I don't know by statute if there's a limit on how many meetings that we're actually supposed to have. But that's a good, that's what I exactly thought that's what your question was. And
I don't recall, honestly, if there's a mandatory minimum number of meetings like quarterly or at least once a year or something like that. I can't.
No less frequently than once a quarter.
Okay.
so we would, so with this schedule, we would still meet the bylaw requirements and statutory requirements.
Correct. Thank you.
Excellent question. Thank you for bringing it up.
Mr. Chair, before you vote on that, though, I would probably ought to have the it's not as presented and amended because of finance.
You okay with that? And who made the second on that? You okay with that?
Yes, sir.
All right, so we have an amended motion. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor, so I'm saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes carry. One last thing that I did not mention earlier is that on our regional meeting coming up, the 3 chairs of both Plan RVA, the TPO and the CVTA, on behalf of those 3 organizations, have drafted a letter that's been sent requesting the governor to come to our joint meeting, giving him an opportunity to address the body. Governor's not had an opportunity to address the CVTA since elected or the other bodies, and we felt it was a great opportunity for him to be able to come and meet with all of the regional leaders that work diligently on in different matters from the 3 committees. And so that letter was drafted, signed, and sent out to the governor's office. So I wanted to make you all aware of that, and we're waiting a response to determine whether or not he'll be available to come and speak. Any other CVTA members that may have anything that they want to bring before the CVTA? Mr. Schoonhour.
Sure. Thank you. Going back to your comments regarding the hiring of the new executive director. Ms. Page and I got to sit on the last committee and it was it became clear towards the end of that process that there may be some discussion needed by this body regarding the scope of that role. I think we went into it thinking the scope of the role is around an application process and a prioritization process, but then further discussion, there were some localities that felt that the executive director may actually be involved in project administration. So I hope as we go down the process, I would just ask that maybe potentially this body get an opportunity to discuss the scope of that role as we move into, so we make sure that we have the right candidate with the right skills. Thank you, Mr.
Great point, and I believe that was part of what was presented to the search committee, the search organization appointing, as part of the experience that they're looking for is that someone may have to have that administrative experience to actually administer. Right. So that was all part of what was put forward. So that's a great point. And there was something else I was going to tell you, but took it right out of my head. Oh, we have had the opportunity to go to all but one jurisdiction to do the CVTA presentation. We're saving last but not least will be Goochland. And we have Chet. I want to commend Chet for the work that he's done on this. He's done the bulk of the presentation as we've come to all the committees and all the board of supervisors meetings. We've also did a presentation in front of the Chesterfield Chamber last month. I guess it's still this month, actually. It's not April yet. And it was, we had like two and a quarter people in the room, very well received. They actually clapped, which was similar to Hanover's experience, but it was, he's done a great job. I want to make sure that he gets a recognition for what he did with coming with me to all these different meetings and trying to get the word out to the community of what all y'all have been doing for the last couple of years with this fine organization. It's certainly what Frank has done. Mr. Former Chair.
One thing you did not mention to our Gus colleagues here is that in Henrico County, we had the pleasure of your coming to us and sharing with us what is the raison d'etre of CVTA. And we're very appreciative of that, you and Mr. Parsons doing your visit. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Any other board members?
Mr. Chair, it might be, you might want to share something about the transportation forum that you participated in for us.
Oh, that's a really good point. We obviously, I mean, hopefully, I know there were many people here who participated in the transportation forum, and I will say that I'm gonna let Chet speak to the bulk of what was presented because I thought it was really great. And all I did was wrap it up at the end, but I thought it was a lot of great information.
Sure. Yes, sir. So the TPO annually sponsors the transportation forum, and in past years it has rotated by jurisdiction depending on who the chair was. As a means of reflecting and looking back over the last 2 years, there was a committee set up by the TPO to look at how to make that forum more effective. And as a result of that work, chaired by Dr. Newbill, the forum left that rotation model and was held at Main Street Station. There was lots of publicity sent out. We partnered with the Chamber RVA to publicize it and try and get more membership and participation from outside the normal TPO channels. And I think it was very successful. We had a packed room, I think about 100. Janice, do you remember the number?
Exactly 100.
100 people. So we were in the head house, which if you've been in Main Street Station, it's at the top of the stairs on the second floor. The room was full. We had great atmosphere and refreshments. Thanks to the work of Ms. Clark, we were able to get everything set up and organized with, professional support. And I think the topics were timely. The idea or the focus was to look at big ideas. What are the big transportation ideas to think about in the future? And so we had presentations from thought leaders on safety and freight movement, bus rapid transit, lots of things.
Support.
Yeah, support.
I mean, I personally thought the information provided on the ports was very enlightening indeed.
And we did a follow-up survey to all the attendees. Hopefully, if you were there, you were able to fill out that survey, and we got some great responses that we're able to build on the experience this year for next year's forum. And we'll be starting that planning process maybe tomorrow. I mean, we've already started. So we're looking forward to working with each of you and your staff on setting up the next forum.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you for bringing that up, Ms. Peterson. Actually, something that popped into my head, totally different, is I was looking across the room and I realized that Delegate Robinson, December 1st will probably be your last meeting. Good. So we got some work to do on how we're gonna recognize these people for the fine work that they've done on the committee. Any other CVT members with any comments? What I would, sometimes what we have reports on here that, you know, we certainly put together the agenda, but I think it's important that other parts of this organization who are here maybe want to talk about what their organization is doing. I know that I sit on the Capital Region Airport Commission with Perry, and they're doing some great things. And so perhaps in the future, you could bring us a report on stuff about the airport. I think that would be very enlightening for some of the members who are here who actually don't serve on the committee. Equally, I think information, you know, from GRTC would be equally as important. And all of the organizations, even I want to be inclusive of everybody, and I don't want, and so what I would ask is that if you get a request from Chet to do a report, we're gonna make sure that the time is appropriate so that you can report out on some vital information about your organization and your role and relating to CVTA, because I think sometimes we forget to recognize the other organizations that are here, and that they are here not just to sit and listen to us run our mouth for an hour. They actually have a lot that they bring to the table with them, and I think it would be very enlightening for the committee. So if you get a request in the future for a report, that's really what it's about, is to make sure that, you know, when we looked at the forum and all the information that was provided, it's very enlightening for everybody who was there. And I think it's equally enlightening for this body to get information from these other organizations that are part of this organization. So you may get requests in the future.
Mr. Chair, since you opened that door, if you mind, I would like to just issue a caution for people that plan on travel. Since COVID, we are about 95% recovered. But yesterday, we had highest day since COVID. We had over 8,000 passengers. Prior to COVID, we were in the range anywhere between 7,000, 10,000 passengers a day. The reason I bring that up because we had a few people come to the airport under the, under the impression they could still kind of go, skip through there. Not the case. We had a couple people miss their flight. So if you're planning on traveling, please use the 2-hour rule. What you call if you call me like, get that 2 hours in advance. And just a reminder that in May, we have coming online Jacksonville, Los Angeles, Cincinnati, Providence, New York, Islip, and Minneapolis. Great opportunity to take a trip and use your favorite airport, please.
Yeah. See, why you get a prod people? All the great information just came out of that.
Just in case, let me get your number.
Any other members? Well, I have to say that we did that in just about an hour. I appreciate everybody's time today. Travel safe, and unless there's nothing else before the August committee, we will stand adjourned until the next meeting.